Hey everybody, and welcome back to Movie Howl. This time, Joe and I, my lovely co-host here, and I'm Ryan, by the way, in case this is the first time you're seeing us when we're kind of coming back from a long hiatus. We are talking about a very timely movie, Assassins from 1995, because it's exactly the kind of movie we need nowadays. Anti-political agenda, anti-boring, anti-moral messages. Like, it's just fun movie. Back when a movie could just be entertainment, right?
Yep, agreed.
So how are you doing? You ready? You excited?
I'm ready. So this movie, which I can't say I'd ever actually watched all the way through. I obviously knew of it. I'm sure I'd caught pieces of it. This is the 1995 classic with Sylvester Stallone,
As
Antonio Banderas,
a man called Robert Rath.
Robert Rath. What a
How
great name.
much more 90s can you get with a name like that?
It's so good. The name was great.
Oh my god!
And,
I love like paperbacks from the dollar store.
Mhm.
That is a perfect dollar store paperback name,
Ooh.
Robert Rath.
Yeah, as the main protagonist of a story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you've got Sly, you've got Antonio Banderas, and then you've got Julianne Moore. Young Julianne Moore. This movie that you made me watch.
I don't like the way you're starting this off, but okay.
It's a product of its time. And this is not a movie that I'm going to do any sort of deep intellectual dive on, trying to, really, what did the writers mean in this scene? Or what was the director trying to tell us with this? None of that. It is exactly what it is. Wears its heart on its sleeve. This movie, it was exactly kind of what you mentioned in the very beginning, a throwback to a time when they weren't trying to put any message in the movie outside of this is what this movie's about. You have older, aging, experienced assassin, and Robert Rath, Stallone's character, and then you had younger, newer, hipper on the scene of Antonio Banderas' character. Miguel Bain was his character's name. The one thing I would really like to start out by saying about this, seeing Antonio Banderas, and this was so right before this, he did a series of movies in that year. There was the first one that blew him up, and that was Desperado, which you said as we were watching this you hadn't seen.
No.
It's probably, as far as early Antonio Banderas, his most famous movie. And I did throw it on our list for movies that we could watch because it is absolutely worth a watch. It's fun.
Yeah, we
movie.
talked about it a little bit, that the first time I can recall seeing him was Interview with the Vampire from 1994. And then in that movie, him, Brad Pitt, and Tom Cruise were like sort of just starting out. And Christian Slater, who had a small, like an important introductory role, but a small role in the movie, was kind of the most prominent person in that. But I didn't realize that he did that. And then he did, like, he was just busy 16 hours a day for the next year or the rest of that year. And then the whole next year, like filming back-to-back movies that were all like fun action kind of stuff. But that's what you were doing back then.
That's right. That's what you were doing.
I mean, even Stallone was doing The Specialist and Tango and Cash and all that stuff right in the same like year or two frame.
Mm-hmm. So you've got the thing that I really appreciated about this is it brought me back to a time when I was first introduced to this young man known as Antonio Banderas.
He was 35 in this, and he is so energetic. It makes me really disappointed in myself. I was thinking like,
he looked like he was 23.
I know, that's what I was thinking. Like, oh, he's so
disgusting.
He's like Billy, my brother-in-law, who's a teenager. It's like okay. That explains why he's like jumping around. But no, he's a grown man. He's just in good shape, and I have no excuses.
It just reminded me of when he first burst onto the scene. And I saw him as like, God, if it was in 95, he's older than me for sure, because I graduated high school in 97. Like, that's my time frame. But it just reminded me, looking back on something like this now, how outgoing and charismatic of a person he is, and the roles that he played. He is very very entertaining to watch. And this, for me, the most fun I had with this movie was watching him and how energetic he was, how charismatic he was. It was really, really fun to watch him in this movie. I thought this was the kind of movie that Sly, he kind of phoned it in. This was just kind of a very generic role I say he was playing. I don't think there was anything extraordinary. There was no extraordinary character development. The thing that kept me engaged in this movie was the back and forth between them and how much fun this antagonist of Miguel Bain was having during all of their interactions.
Yeah, it's a great mystery. This whole thing of like Robert shows up, he's doing a job, he's taking out another guy who presumably does something, either what he does or something adjacent to what he does. And he's like, someday it's going to be your turn and whatever. And yeah, then Miguel Bain shows up, takes one of his hits. And he's like, who is this guy? He's talking to his handler. Everybody, they talk through a really elaborate setup where they hook an old Apple PowerBook to a cell phone. And like all of these old movies are like that. They all use Apple PowerBooks, kind of like today. They all use like Apple computers for the most part. And there's something I want to point out here, and I wonder if you noticed it, because I think I told you I might have told you that there was one thing that really stuck out to me, but it was that the guys in this movie all type with only one hand. They only ever type with one hand. Like Stallone is like, oh, I'm retired, I'm out of here. But he's like typing something else with one hand, just one hand. And then same thing, Antonio Banderas, there's a scene where he's in the bathtub after one of their encounters, like he's getting cleaned up because he's been through a lot.
Yeah.
His physicality puts him through a lot. And he's in this tub and he's just at the edge of the tub and he's typing with one hand a whole bunch. And it's like, who thought that looked cooler? But yeah, somebody somewhere thought Stallone looks crazy typing on this little tiny laptop. He looks like Mr. Incredible. They didn't have that reference yet, but that's what he would look like if he had like both of his hands together.
Yeah.
I realize now like what I looked like because I got made fun of one time. I went with a friend to like a restaurant or whatever, and we both pulled out our laptops, and she had like a 17-inch laptop and I had an 11-inch MacBook Air or whatever, and they just like came over and just laughed at me. Like pointed and laughed, the waiter. It's like, nah, I now know what that looks. I should have been typing with one hand.
There you go.
It would have been okay.
Problem solved.
But yeah, there's it's got a little bit of a mystery to it that there are like normal hits that they're being assigned, and then they keep getting in each other's way. And we even see a thing where they're saying like, Wrath is not the target. Stop going after him. So we realize that there's a handler who's doing something. Bane is doing something on his own, and Wrath just wants out because Sly was 49, I think, in 1995. I looked it up. 49. See, I thought he was 35.
Okay, so I want to ask. This is something from the outset of the movie I didn't understand. They never. There's not enough backstory on Wrath to explain this for any reason, but in the very beginning of the movie, it seems like he wants to be done. He doesn't want to be a part of this world anymore. And then his handler, who he's talking to through this elaborate computer phone setup, one more job, or this, or it wasn't even, okay, it wasn't the one more job yet. It was I have this job for you. I didn't understand why he wasn't like, no. He'd been a hitman for a long time at this point, and you have to figure he either just is horrible with money and just blew it like MC Hammer, or he's loaded and doesn't need money. But they don't have any background on it. So if he wanted to quit, why would he just be like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm a hitman. I'm like number one. They even mentioned it. They talk about who's the top dog in Miguel Bain's character, Miguel Bain and Antonio Banderas' character he's trying to get to number one. That he like as a hitman somehow is like, I looked up to you. You were the guy that I was trying to be you. Why would he engage in any of this at all? Which from the outset of the movie, it was hard because I didn't understand. I was trying to understand the motivations of it. And if I can take that away and be unconcerned with that, the motivations a little later on kind of became more apparent when the introduction of Julianne Moore's character, and it kind of got rolling from there. But
See,
I just didn't get it.
I get what you're saying, and I had the same thought that he's been doing this a long time. He's getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars every time he does this. But he's acting like the payout at the end is all he's going to have. Like,
Right?
oh, I'm
Yeah.
going to have 10 million, 8 million, whatever it wound up being ultimately after taxes and fees and all the shit that he had to deal with at the bank. But yeah, he should have had a whole career. I mean, that was 1995. Like, average salary in the US was like 30,000. Like, you make 30,000 working at Dollar General now because nobody can afford anything anymore. You know what I mean? Like, things have changed so much.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of these things with older movies where sometimes you see like there's like a $1,500 reward for something or a prize or whatever, and it's like, we can buy a house and a car with that. And it's, but like, this is a 30-year-old movie almost.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that. These are all still life-changing amounts of money today. How did you spend it? Like, you would have to try really hard to spend that amount of money. But yeah,
it's like the Dr. Evil $1 million,
mm-hmm.
and then they have to like inform him.
They all laugh. Yeah,
that's not really a lot of money. Like, it's not to say. So it's that from the outset made this. I'm like, but letting that go.
Well, I think it's one of those things where for him, because he's been doing this so long and he clearly doesn't think a lot of it. Like, he's not worried about it. He's like a door dasher, and he's like, I'm done. Oh, but there's somebody who's like, they want this from McDonald's, but they'll also pay me like $100 to go pick them up like a 30 pack and a pack of cigarettes or whatever. I know a guy who did DoorDash or whatever it was, and he said there was a certain customer who'd be like, yeah, go get me a pizza, but also get me like beer and cigarettes, and he would always tip him $100. So it's like, if you know you're going to get a bunch of money, it's like, why not? Okay, I'll do one more before I log off the app.
Right, for what you're doing anyways.
Yeah, that's kind of what this guy was probably thinking. Robert Rath. He's like, I've been doing this for 30 years anyway. I might as well just go ahead and do this one because the payout's a little, twice what the last one was, or whatever it works out to be. But little did he know it would pull him into this situation. I also
just pulls me back in.
I also wanted to point out that I really like Antonio Banderas is like the way he plays the character physically, because he doesn't really have to say. He does still say like what he's doing, but he doesn't really have to. You know what I mean? Like, there's a point he's trying to see like, oh, who just got here? So he's putting his hand on the hoods of these cars, right? I immediately knew what he was doing, but he's still like, cold, cold, hot. Okay, this car. Like, what space is this car in? Okay, now I know what unit to go to. Or there's the part where he starts sniffing. He's like, oh, I've smelled this perfume before. So he's trying to track down, the female lead, Electra, or whatever her character name was supposed to be. There's a lot of stuff that he does where you can follow what he's thinking without him having to say it, even though it's the 90s and they still over-explain, but they still do that stuff today. But I at least appreciated that with most other characters, they would have to say like, oh, I smell this thing that I've smelled before, where he's so animated. Lavender, and then he takes off after.
He was so much fun to watch in this. It just reminded me of when I first saw Antonio Banderas as a much younger man, and just how much fun it was to go see a movie and watch him. Back when we went to see movies to see actors, not to see roles.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really fun. So one of the things I found out about this movie was, number one, and I didn't really realize it, it was directed by Richard Donner, who has a couple of, he's not like the biggest thing in Hollywood that has ever been director-wise, but he's got some good things to his name. Like, he did all the Lethal Weapons. He directed the classic The Goonies.
Didn't he do Superman?
Yep. I was going to say, he did Superman. He did the Supermans. He did Scrooged, but
that's a great movie.
It's a great movie. And he also did, this is a movie that I just have a special place for in my heart. I really enjoyed it. He did Maverick, if you ever saw that, where it's got Mel Gibson, who's a old Wild West card shark.
Okay. No, I haven't seen it. I know the one you're talking about. I can picture him in it.
But something about this that I found out was Richard Donner, as the director, claimed the film would have worked better if he swapped Sylvester Stallone and Antonio Banderas in their roles. I don't really know. How does that make sense? It doesn't make sense. You can't have a 35-year-old man playing the role of an assassin who's been killing people for 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been gone a while now. He passed away in 21. I want to say it. I think it said when I looked it up, and his last film credit was like in 2005. So he had long since stopped doing anything. But I would really like to know the thought process behind that, if that's really true, because I don't honestly see how that works, unless he had a different vision for the movie itself. Oh, and just because I'm sorry, I'm even sorry that I have to bring this up, but as doing a little research into this movie, I found out that the famous writers of The Matrix, the Wachowski brothers, who are now the Wachowski sisters, which is a thing that's a thing right now, were writers on this movie. But they didn't like how it turned out, and they wanted to have their names removed from it. The studio was like, no, it just didn't. So their names are still attached to it.
You just taught me a few new things.
Yeah. I found out a couple of things out digging into this movie.
Okay, if you type in when did the Watch, it finishes to Wachowski brothers become the Wachowski sisters. 2016.
2016.
So both of them?
Yeah.
They both did it.
Both of them.
Why? One came out in 2010, the other in 2016. Huh. Interesting.
I mean, if you want to answer as to why, is because there is a mind virus in the world right now, and
no, but they're saying
they caught it hard.
The one did it in 2010. I mean, Lawrence Talana did it in 2010. Apparently, that's way before it was like honestly kind of a trend.
Yep.
I think I've told you this before. I don't know if I've said it on the show, but one of the girls who used to work for me, who was like 21, I remember her one day, but she was really concerned about this stuff, about like being sensitive to people and not using dead names or the wrong pronouns or whatever. And I remember one day she just like took me aside. She's like, "This is all bullshit, isn't it?" She's like, "Everybody I knew in high school was something other than just like a cis hetero whatever." She's like, "Now every single one of them is just a cis hetero whatever. Like half of them are married, most of them have kids." Like she's like, this was just a fad. I was like, it kind of seems that way. It seems like there's probably a small percentage who are genuine about it, and then a whole bunch of people who are just like jumping on the band. Like, wait a minute, this person's getting attention for that. I like attention.
I mean, it's really not that dissimilar to people who are self-diagnosing with autism or with all these different diagnoses for I've got this, I've got that. It realistically it comes down to narcissism, because people want attention. That's all this.
Yeah.
But I wasn't trying to derail.
We're kind of
interesting history to this movie. I was like, hey, I recognize those names. But then I'm like, why is it a girl's name? Oh, yeah, that's a thing that happened. Oh, well, whatever.
We're riding a fine line here between being offensive and being like, oh, real thing, but some people take advantage of it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh man. So yeah, there are a lot of things in this movie that I enjoyed. Like it doesn't handhold you too much. There's like, it feels they did a decent job of, I feel like, setting up an assassin world almost in the way John Wick did.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that occurred to me well after the fact. It's like in John Wick, it's all like obsolete, antiquated technology that nobody would really be able to spy on nowadays because nobody's looking for it. It's like if I was going to start committing crimes or whatever and like communicating with people about robbing banks or some shit, I would use like payphones, or I would use something that nobody would ever think to look for. Or like, there's got to be somebody
like
out
carrier
there.
Pigeons?
I was just about to say, there's got to be somebody delivering drugs with carrier pigeons, because what are you going to do? Are the cops going to sit on like a rooftop somewhere and boom with a shotgun and just check? Like, this one, it was just a pigeon. This one didn't have drugs. That's my bad, guys.
I could have sworn shotgun. You just have a puff of feathers. Like what? Ain't nothing left. I'm thinking you were going to say pellet rifle. My dang.
But yeah, and then this is the opposite because it's the 90s, so all the technology is super advanced for the time. Cell phones, beepers. That's my beeper.
Ooh,
but it's so good, and they do a decent job of making it feel like sort of a lived-in world. Like, this is how things work. If you're doing this job, this is how you communicate. You don't have direct contact. This is how you receive your information. It's compartmentalized. Nobody knows who the other people are. Even with Elektra, she's like a hacker. She's like, I barely remember my own name or my own birth date or whatever. Like, she has this history. She's also spying on all of her neighbors. Why? Who knows? That's her journey. We're not told.
But like,
it's just something
they
that
don't
she
get into
does.
any of that. That was so weird.
I know, but it's so good because she's one of the targets. It's like, here's a person that you're supposed to take out, and it's like, of course they're up to weird and interesting shit.
Yeah,
you know, she's not just somebody random who's sitting at home who's like, oh, I took this disc from work and it has apparently some sensitive information on it. She's not accidentally involved in something like in Fair Game. She's doing bad stuff on her own. She's selling secrets or whatever it is that she's doing. You know, we never really find out what's on the disc, but everybody has like this little device that has a floppy disk drive in it and like apparently a giant like nickel cadmium battery, and they stick the floppy in it. They're like, yeah, it checks out. And they like eject it. And it's, if you know what you're looking for, then you have the information you're trying to get. Unless that thing is just checking to see if there's something on the disc. It could be a shopping list on the disc if you're just looking for data. It doesn't have to be the thing that you're paying like $20 million for. But we have to forgive it because it's 1995. That's when the movie Hackers came out. If you want to see a realistic depiction of hacking culture, I highly recommend you watch that movie.
That was one of the very earliest Angelina Jolie movies. I remember reading the book Hackers that was based on that movie. It was I watched Hackers. I know exactly what you're talking about. I enjoyed the hell out of it.
It's a great movie. I think that's how Angelina Jolie and Johnny Lee Miller first got together. There's still a line that I quote in that a lot. Do you remember the one kid who's like, he has to go to these meetings and he's like it's some kind of addiction. He's like addicted to his computer. So he's at these addiction meetings and he's like, got coffee and like cigarettes and he's just like frantically smoking and running around and stuff. But the FBI breaks into his house and like starts stealing this stuff. And he's like, Lucy, no. That's what he calls his computer.
Yes. Oh my God. Now, I have not seen that in so long, but yes, I do. I'm
pretty sure within the last calendar year, Kim has like taken my phone or something. And I've been like, Lucy, no. And she has no idea what I'm doing. She married this. It's okay.
I mean, too late now. You put a ring on, it's done. It's over. What are you gonna do?
Yep. We don't do divorce in this household. Not allowed.
There were some good scenes in this movie. I enjoyed the first meeting of Robert and Miguel, where they meet at the cemetery because there's a funeral going on, and where Miguel steals his contract.
There you go.
And I really enjoyed how that turned out when he realized, well, I'm caught, but I have this other. He didn't know who he was at that moment, but he knew there was the other assassin that he was taking it from, who was kind of shooting back at him. Like, he understood kind of what was going on, but then he's like, oh, I'm just going to let the cops take me and then go from there. And that when he escapes from the cops, that scene, when he's being taken by them, I really enjoyed that. And so there's something, and I found this out too. There's something he says to the cops in Spanish, which I'm not going to try to reproduce that because I'm just going to utterly obliterate it. But it translated to, be careful with the guns. They're loaded by the devil. I like that. So it's one of those times that makes me, I wish I was bilingual with Spanish, because that would have been very nice to understand in the moment. But that was good. I enjoyed finding that out a little bit afterwards. But that scene I thought was good. The way it ended, the way he got away, and some of the scenes that just happened in this movie were, there was nothing groundbreaking. Like there was no action scene that contained anything you hadn't seen before. There was just nothing that was so, oh my God, and just blew you away. But they were done. I mean, we're talking Richard Donner, who's had some good titles to his name. And so the things that were done in it were competently done. And it was an enjoyable movie to watch just from that aspect in and of itself.
Yeah, it was before this whole thing of like moral ambiguity in these characters and trying to make everything sort of relative, that from my perspective, the Jedi are evil, that kind of thing. They're giving you what you want, and they're giving you a fun ride. You're rooting for certain people. For the most part, they come out the way you probably think they will. but it doesn't give you this whole like, I don't know. I feel like if they were to make it today, you would not have the more experienced guy be like experienced and know what to do and know how to handle things. You know, they would have had the Electra character like school him a couple, not help. She wouldn't just help. She would like take over stuff and belittle him because they like that like back and forth kind of fighting at each other thing. I think the point in modern movies is maybe like you butt heads at first and then learn to work together. I think that's an optimistic way of looking at it.
Very optimistic, but okay.
But this is one where it's like, oh no, this guy's just been doing this for 30 years. He's really good at it. He knows what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And things tend to mostly go off the rails when Electra doesn't listen to him. But she's also helpful and holds her own, which I like. I've been reminded a little bit of it.
Yes and no. There was other scenes where that's not the case.
Well, but I mean, she's showing up and she's doing what she's supposed to. I've been watching Penguin on Max, and
I've only seen the first episode so far.
Okay, I won't.
Fantastic otherwise.
It's so good. But the character of Victor has these moments where he's like out of his element. He's with Oz, who knows what he's doing.
Is that the young man who he picks up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The kid with the stutter.
Mm-hmm.
Where Penguin's like, Jesus, like take a breath. It's okay. And I think they did. Yeah, that show's so good. I'm not going to try to review that right now. It's just like, it's kind of a touching moment where he's like going to shoot this kid. And then he sees that the kid is so freaked out. And I feel like he sees sort of a little of himself in him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, this kid has an issue. Like I have an issue. Like he has a physical disability. This kid has a speech impediment. You know, he's like, and then he takes him in and he asks the kid to do stuff. And the kid doesn't always do it exactly right, but he keeps showing up and he keeps contributing and he doesn't try to belittle anybody or show anybody up. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, like you said, it's a product of its time and it's a really fun movie. It's one of the ones where, you know, I was buying VHS tapes from the thrift store or I was digging ones out that I still had and just watching them like in the background while I was working. And this was one of the ones where I was like, okay, I have to pause this and finish what I'm doing. And then like on my lunch, I'll come back and finish the scene or whatever. Cause it honestly was pretty good. Like it's not super intellectual, but it's engaging.
I feel like I like the realism of Electra's character. And I'm going to say this, and it's going to not sound good the way I'm going to say it. And I don't mean it to sound this way. I'm just going to preface that right now. But she's just a girl. She has the ability to do these things with computers because she's worked around computers for a long time. It is her life. She doesn't have like a social life per se. She's not the belle of the ball. She can't do it all. She can't, she's not going to be changing your carburetor in your car and taking it apart and repairing it. She's not going to be beating up all the bad guys. She's not going to be and she does things that you could potentially see a female doing. Like, I'm married, you're married. You know how your wife reacts to certain things you do or say. And so the fact that he was like, okay, we need to stay here. But she's like, well, I want to go see the thing. And then he looks around and she's gone. And then that's when Antonio Banderas is all, Lavender. And he like goes sniffing after her because she did the wrong thing. Like, it's like, oh yeah, that seems like in character for this person. And that was nice to see. It was like, it's such this throwback to this time that we don't have anymore, where they're trying to take people and make them do things that when you look at them on a face value bit, like, this doesn't make sense. You as this person can't be good at literally everything.
Right. Like she's a hacker.
Yeah.
And she's like,
that's what she's good at.
Yeah, she's like, I don't know how to deal with this stuff. Like, I don't do car chases and gunfights and stuff like that. And he's like, well, that's what I do.
Right.
And then he goes off to trade the information for money. And then when he comes back, she's like, nah, I didn't give you the real disc. Like, I was pretty sure they were going to do that because of what's already happened. So I have a copy of it here.
Yes, I like that. I like that so much.
Like that's an instance where she's like, no, I know from my experience.
And then there's a scene much later on in the movie. And sorry, Hooligans, spoilers for this
30-year-old
movie. Okay. So she's trying to reach a rifle in a compromising situation with what's happening in the end of this movie. And she puts herself in a compromising situation because of it. but it was a brave moment for her to do that. She didn't just super, parkour and get up to the rafters to get it. Like, it was difficult. It made sense. What I was watching made sense. So there were parts of this that you're not looking back on this for a time frame like, oh, this is a Shawshank Redemption. This is a Saving Private Ryan. Some of these epic movies that you're going to remember, throughout the decades. This is, as we've already said, it's a product of its time, but it's unlike other things that came out in this time period. This is worth a watch. Like, it's done well. It's not over the top. It's not trying, certainly like you said in the beginning, not trying to push any message, which is almost like a breath of fresh air compared to some of the stuff that we've been subject to recently. So, like, I think my least favorite part of this movie, and I almost hesitate to say this because I like him so much as an actor in general, is Sylvester Stallone. It's just like, he's kind of there. He does what he's supposed to. He's competent. He knows what he's doing. But I didn't feel any, unlike Antonio Banderas' character, who felt like in this movie, and maybe that's because of how, Miguel Bain as a character was in the movie, but it felt like he was having fun. And Sylvester Stallone just seemed like he was just there. But that also, I will grant it, part of his character. He's the older man. He's done this for a long time. Stoic. There's a couple scenes where, like, I've seen some of the things that Sylvester has done, especially recently. He's funny. Like, he's a funny guy.
Your favorite Stallone movie is Rhinestone, right? Where Dolly Parton has to teach him to be a singer.
Oh my God, no! What is it? There was one he did way back. Oh, I can't remember what it is right now, but he'd done all these action movies, and then he did something else. Oh, I have to look. I have to know what it is. From so long ago.
Is it Oscar?
Yeah, maybe.
It's from 91, I think, around there.
What's so far back? Yes, actor.
His name in it is Angelo Provolone.
I think it is that. What year was that?
91.
Oh my God, it was. I don't know even how to look through this. It's so disgusting.
It's got Sylvester Stallone, Marissa Tomei, Tim Curry. Those are the big names.
It absolutely is that, and he's funny. That movie wasn't particularly great, but some of the things I've seen him, and there were some moments in this, some interactions between him and her. I really appreciated him and her and this cat. That was really good.
I also like that not everything is just a repeat, like more of the same thing. Like I mentioned John Wick earlier, so that's an example we can use of, like, a lot of the John Wick fights are kind of the same thing happening over and over again because it's really good and really fun. But there's a lot of cat and mouse kind of stuff in this. You see Miguel doing what he's doing, and he's like dropping a beeper here, and he's like kind of watching people and like figuring things out about them, and the way the camera focuses on things, you realize that he's picking up like, oh, these people are not, this is not a couple who happens to be standing here. Like these are cops watching somebody or whatever. Or Robert is like, okay, let's see what people are ordering for room service at this hotel. And I can find this woman who I know likes cats because her like internet logo, as his handler calls it, her internet logo, or cat eyes. It's cat eyes. She's like, oh, can of tuna. Has to be her. She's going to be in a hotel for 15 minutes. So she has to have ordered like, it's like 8 coffees and like 2 cans of tuna. And somehow she spray paints that lady's like mink coat in a, like, she makes like a noise, and they look, and she's just making this noise. And they're like, oh, she's just crazy. And so when she's spray painting, somehow they don't smell it, but they ignore the noise because she was making that. I guess it's the 90s, so everybody was smoking. So their sense of smell is probably
maybe.
Great.
I mean, not smoking like they were like in the 40s and 50s and stuff. But
no, but I remember going into restaurants where people were smoking, and it's like, I don't remember smelling smoke. It's like you didn't smell it back then. It was everywhere.
Oh, yeah. I grew up. My mom smoked all my life. Still does. Almost 80 years old. And so it offends me less than other people who they go somewhere and it's like, and I don't ever remember our house growing up smelling like smoke. She she cleaned houses for a living, like would do that in the morning and then pick me up from this one, babysitter that I would go to for a little bit of time while she went and cleaned one house a day. But our house was always spotless. And then she cleaned it before people came over. I'm like, what are you doing? It's already clean. Like, what? I never understood it then. I get it now. Like, yeah. I mean, I get it now, but I just grew up with it. So it was never really a thing for me. But so I get that. But it used to be you could smoke on an airplane. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine lighting up a cigarette on an aeroplane?
Not today, but the trick apparently was to buy tickets like right on the edge of it. The smell didn't really bother you. Or just sit in the smoking zone. Apparently those tickets were cheaper. I was told this by a lot of the guys that I used to work with who flew all the time. It's like, oh yeah, the trick was you always sat near there. And they're like, I kind of miss that because now the tickets are more expensive. You don't have this like very undesirable area of the airplane to take advantage of. I was like, how'd you take it? And he's like, I just smoked too. So, oh, okay. You weren't a non-smoker like giving something up. You're just a smoker like everybody else who just sat in the smoking section.
I remember working at a warehouse where most of the guys there smoked, and I didn't. I didn't smoke cigarettes, whatever. But I remember standing around. They were all taking a smoke break, and I was standing there with them. The boss walks over, looks at everybody, and looks at me and is like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm taking a smoke break." It's like, "Well, you're not smoking?" I was like, I'm cheap. I secondhand. So, I was like, they don't get to walk away for 5-10 minutes and smoke, and I have to keep working. That's some BS. I'm not doing that. Get out of here.
I secondhand it. You go out like Miguel.
So overall, I was I got to be honest. I was sketched when you said this was the movie you wanted to watch. Like I was kind of hoping it was going to be, you're going to say like Ninja Assassin, because I'm a big fan of that movie. It's super bloody and I love it. But it was a fun throwback. It had a little bit of a twist, I would say, at the end that I really, because this movie doesn't really make you think that hard, I think it surprised me more than I expected it to.
Uh-huh.
The way that worked, it was almost something that was like, oh, how did I not see that coming? But I feel like I didn't see it coming because I didn't care. Like, I was just on this journey with these people. I have this young, charismatic Antonio Banderas, which was super fun to watch. The interaction between Robert Rath and Elektra. And I got to say, the whole thing between them and her cat and how her cat just like automatically gloms onto him was hilarious. That was just really fun to me personally. And I enjoyed it quite a bit. I thought there were some good moments between those two. And it was fun to see. Like, I still don't think from the beginning of the movie till the end of the movie, I don't feel like Robert Rath's character grew a whole lot, but I really enjoyed watching the interactions between him and Miguel or him and Elektra. Both of that I did enjoy that. There was some good to be found in those moments that weren't necessarily action, I'm fighting him, whatever. Those moments were good. They were fine. Yeah. But the moments where that wasn't happening, where he was just talking to her, or he was just having a conversational interaction with Miguel, all of that was really good. And I really did enjoy it. So regardless of my skepticism, I think I enjoyed this more than I expected.
Yeah, you're making me realize that he didn't go on the hero's journey. Nope. Actually, she did more than anything because she like gained some courage and perspective and whatever. So that's interesting. But yeah, I'm glad that we're talking about this today, even though we watched it a little while ago, because I'm in a sort of a nostalgic mood. I was watching stuff about the game industry, like video games, like how things are going in the industry, like studio shutting down, layoffs and all this stuff. And there's a guy who wrote a book. I don't remember his name, but he wrote a book about like how Blizzard has kind of been going downhill. Not kind of, but talking about how bad these acquisitions can be, that, Microsoft buys, what was it, Activision Blizzard, right? And then they lay off like 19,000 people or something crazy.
That's a lot.
It's a lot
of people.
But they're just talking about like back when Blizzard was really doing a lot of good stuff. Blizzard is the one. Didn't Blizzard do Diablo?
Yep.
Yeah, they did Diablo,
Warcraft.
Yep. Like they did all of these games that were like sort of essential back in the day, like in the early 2000s. And they were saying that was a time when it was gamers that worked there. Like the whole idea for World of Warcraft was a lot of the guys who worked there were playing StarCraft. And they're like, oh, well, if this was ours, I would do this. I would change that. And I would change this. And I would make it this way. And then they were like, well, let's just do that. And then they made this cash cow with a monthly subscription and 12 million users at its peak. And it was just a monster.
Mm-hmm.
And then they came to a point where they had like, I think he said that it was a guy who worked for like Procter and Gamble or something. Like that came in as like a financial guy to try to like rein in what they were doing. And he had no idea what was going on. And I feel like that's a lot of it now. Like you don't feel like for the most part, people are enjoying what they're doing. Like Antonio Banderas really seemed like he was having fun in this movie. Like the director seemed like, I want to give people what they want. Like I want to give them a fun experience. I don't want to make them think. I don't want to like offend anybody's sensibilities. I don't want to give a moral message. I just want this to be a fun ride.
That's one of the biggest things I think we're missing in Hollywood right now, especially considering how much IP is being used of other source material instead of new things being written. Yeah. And if you're going to take something that already has a previously established fan base, you need to have people who are a part of that fan base working on that project.
Yeah, I am so cheap. It's crazy. I will buy a new phone, no problem, computer, whatever. But for some reason, I could not bring myself to buy Hogwarts Legacy. It was still $60. But I saw it on sale, so I got it for like $20. I played like 30 minutes of it today after work, and I immediately saw what you were talking about.
Yep.
That whoever made this clearly cared. Like there's a scene in the very beginning, this doesn't spoil anything, where you're getting into carriage. It's like self-drawn, like the ones at the early Harry Potter movies and books. Like you don't see any horses or anything. Now, in the Harry Potter universe, those are pulled by creatures called Thestrals, which are skeletal, like black horses with bat wings, basically. And they can only be seen by somebody who has witnessed death, which is why in the Harry Potter books, none of the kids can see them.
Except for a couple, yes.
Except for like Luna. Luna can see them. After the Goblet of Fire, Harry can see them. Stuff like that. In the first part of it, like they take off and they're flying in one of these carriages that's being pulled by nothing. And then all of a sudden, the back half of the carriage is ripped off with a guy in it by a dragon. And the dragon's like, chomp. And all of a sudden, your character looks and the Thestrals all appear. No explanation. They don't address it. They just appear. And I was like, oh my God, they cared enough about like the lore and the rules of this universe to make that happen. I'm in for probably something really fun.
Yep. It was really fun. I enjoyed the hell out of that game. It has its own issues, but the combat and a lot of parts of that game, I mean, it's some RPG stuff. It's some Fetch Quest stuff. It was made by people who really enjoyed the source material, and that's something that's missing desperately from, I think, a lot of our media right now, whether it's all the streaming services who are coming out with stuff, Hollywood itself in these big budget movies, like even this, I felt like the director in question here cared to bring something to people that was just entertaining. Like, what is my audience and will they be entertained by this?
Yeah.
And that we need more of that.
Yep. Yeah, we have like a lack of, I think, too much oversight and not enough passion for what you're doing. Because it's like the people who made this game were like, what would it look like if you were somebody who came to Gringotts? Like, what does that bank look like? Let's imagine like how crazy this could be.
Yep.
Like first couple scenes in this game.
That's what got me. That scene in the bank, you get into one of those little carts in there and it goes tooling through the underbelly of that bank. That's when I really, really understood, oh, this was made by the people. Whoever made this appreciated the source material.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think I'm really going to appreciate this game. I didn't read any of the Harry Potter books. Let me rephrase. I read some of something else that I was thinking of that ended up getting brought to a streaming
Aragon
form of something.
Aragon, maybe.
I didn't read any of these. I watched all the movies. I liked Harry Potter, but even for somebody who didn't like my daughter, my oldest daughter, who's a big reader, she read all the Harry Potters. And it was like, I understood, even though I never read them and I never really had a desire to, even though I really enjoyed the movies and understood that if I read the books, it would expand on a lot of the different characters and different things that the movies can't do. I never really had the desire to do it, but yeah, I immediately understood playing in the first 30 minutes of this game. Oh, this was done by people who really enjoyed it, and it really made the rest of the experience of it that much better because of it.
Yeah,
you're going to enjoy it.
And I feel like now, I read all the books. I was exactly at the right time for that. Like I was kind of, I was like right on the edge of it where every new book came out. Like it was a huge thing to go to the store and like get the first couple copies. Like you try to avoid texts or calls from people who are also reading it so you don't spoil. Like I had major spoilers for like one of the last books. I'm still irritated about today. My friend Sam called me and she was like, "Can you believe?" I was like, "I'm not that fucking far. I just got it tonight."
Yes, but my best buddy Jeremiah has spoiled a couple things for me like that. Oh man, what about when this happened? I'm like, bro, shut up. Are you serious right now?
I want to get your thoughts, but I'm not sure where you are. Big spoiler.
There you go.
Yeah, it's it's just something that I couldn't help but think about after I heard that today. That like a lot of these corporations, they're looking for unlimited growth. They're looking for home runs every single time. You can't hit a single or a double anymore. Like everything has to be like $1 billion. Hundreds of millions of copies of a game sold or a book or whatever it is. And it's all like this, sort of system that we have where you're accountable to shareholders. You're supposed to grow and grow every single year. And they're putting people into it to kind of try to artificially force things. They're not letting the people who know what they're doing, who are playing these games, like they were talking about kind of the culture. A lot of the things that made it toxic were the things that probably made the game so good. The fact that they were saying that the Blizzard campus was kind of like a college campus. Like a lot of these people lived in apartments nearby and they called them the Blizzard dorms because these guys would get done working, go back there and play video games all night and then come back to work and have like new ideas about what they wanted to do because it's what they were passionate about. And that's the kind of thing that led to a lot of the, sexual misconduct or harassment kind of stuff. Like whatever it is, I'm not trying to belittle or dismiss it. I don't remember what exactly it was in the lawsuit that I think the state of California brought against them. But it was basically just like a bunch of dudes who didn't know how to be around girls. There weren't very many women in the company. And so when there were, it was apparently just very much not good. But I feel like it's the same in movies. Like there's a lot of, this original idea is interesting. But what if we make it a Star Wars thing? Or what if we make it, there has to be some superhero thing. Like we have to be able to tack something on some recognizable IP, or else we're not going to be able to get anybody's attention because there's 17 streaming services all spending $200 million on 8 episodes of some series that's going to lose money because we had TV figured out and we broke it. And everybody's just refusing to admit that we broke it.
Yeah, let me give an example here of something that you and I watched. That I watched and then recommended. I made us watch it so we could review it, and it was ridiculously good. And that's the movie Upgrade.
Yeah,
like we're not going to see. There's no sequel to that. It's not going to turn into a $1 billion franchise. But it was something where somebody had an idea and they turned it into a visual product for us to intake. And for those of us who have watched it, it was incredible. It was that was an idea. I loved it.
That was one of the last movies I watched with my dad before my dad passed. Like I was thinking about it today. I think Joker's the last movie I saw with him at theaters. And yeah, my dad was into a lot of the kind of movies that you and I are. And I remember we watched Upgrade. He was like, "Holy shit, how did I never hear about this movie?"
Because nobody did.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that like it's really disgusting how it's all about that, like you said, shareholders, and it has to be like you have to sell, 1 million copies of the book, or you have to, whatever it is, it has to be so profitable. And what it almost reminds me of back in the early 90s when you had Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa in baseball, and they were having this home run back and forth. To be fair, for those who know, and I am not the biggest sports guy, but I remember growing up and going through that. It saved Major League Baseball.
Yeah,
Major
our
League
roided
Baseball
up
was
guy will beat
dying.
your roided up guy.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
that was what 98. 98 was a huge year for that.
Yeah. Like it was humongous. And they saved baseball. And like I don't care about the steroids and I don't care about any of that. It was so much fun to watch. It didn't matter, but it was all about the home runs. It wasn't about what we are talking about right now, which is realistically it's small ball, base hits. I got a base hit. I got a double. I got this. And one after another, after another, after another. And then you start building runs and you start building a lead on your team to win a game. And so studios, you don't necessarily need to, all right, we're going to put this Marvel movie out and it's going to cover us for the rest of the year because it's going to make all this money. Well, they're not doing that anymore. Those days are done.
I mean, I don't even want to talk about the second Joker. I have zero interest in seeing it because you were 100% right. Like we were on a call maybe before one of these or something, and we talked about it, and I was like, I don't know, it looks kind of good, and you're like, give it time, they'll fuck it up, and you're 100% right because every review I've seen of it is like it's terrible. I think it had a worse opening than Morbius.
Oh
Either
no,
Morbius or Madam Web.
Oh no,
Like
shut up! No way.
It's real bad.
Are you serious?
They spent as much on Joaquin Phoenix, Lady Gaga, and the director, I forget his name, as they did on the entire budget for the first one. Because they expected another. Apparently, the first one was primarily funded by like investors. Warner Brothers didn't really want to put a bunch of money into it because they didn't really believe in the idea. And then it made like $1 billion. It was the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time up until Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah.
And yeah, then Warner Brothers was like, okay, let's do another one. And they had said there will not be another one, or they don't intend to do another one. And so they did one, and it's terrible because
there shouldn't be another one.
I don't know if you can hear Rose crying in the background. She's pissed about it too.
A little bit.
She's so angry.
I feel you, Rose.
She shit her pants.
I was so offended when I found out they were doing another one of those because that was not we're going to start a franchise with this. We're going to turn this from here into the new Suicide Squad, and we're going to bring in our own Batman. And I don't want any of that. I wanted just a standalone Joker movie, which up until you and I watched it, I was very skeptical about because I did not want a background to Joker. I did not want that. And they gave us that, and it ended up being so much better than I expected.
Yeah. And he was, I mean, they set it up so that you would never have really a follow-up to it. Like they gave it like they put in the Batman universe, but Joaquin Phoenix was 49 in that movie. And that's supposed to be like 1981, 1982, something like that. And Bruce Wayne's like 6. So it's like, are we going to have like a 70-year-old Joker fighting Batman or something? Or what are we doing here? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. So it's like, okay,
I would be fine with it if Joker's like 40-something and Batman's a young man, early 20s.
Right. Like, I mean, Batman in the comics.
Out as Batman, that's fine.
Yeah, Batman in the comics, like the established Batman is supposed to be like 31. Like that is when he's sort of hit his stride. Like I think Batman Year One, he's like in his late 20s. He's just starting out. But yeah, to have like a 6-year-old who's supposed to grow into Batman. And yeah, I was perfectly happy with it being, what if there was no Batman?
Yep.
Like I've said before, like Gotham would have been better if they hadn't bothered with Batman. If in the last episode they'd had Bruce come back and be like, all right, I'm ready to,
You mean the show Gotham? I thought you meant like the fictional world Gotham City. I'm like, whoa.
The show. If he had just come back and been like, oh, it's fine. I was ready to be a symbol, but I guess the police just took care of everything because Gordon's a competent leader and he managed to like actually get the police force to do their job. Oh well, and all the villains would have been like 30 years older than Batman, which is crazy. Like all of them would have been like Vulture. Right? Like it's a joke in the Spider-Man comics that Vulture's like geriatric.
Right?
Like I don't think Michael Keaton played up being old enough for that part.
Fair enough.
But yeah, it's like, oh, here's the Riddler. He's also 70.
I still haven't watched the Flash movies with the old Batman.
The Batman scenes are good. The Flash scenes are irritating. There's an interesting reference to the original actor from Back to the Future, like it's this whole thing of time travel, like how time travel works. Like, are you in the same timeline when you go back? Are you somewhere else? And the Flash goes back, and somehow there's like a conversation about the greatest movies or whatever, and Back to the Future comes up, and they're talking about Eric Stoltz, and they're like, no, that was Michael J. Fox. He's like, no, it's Eric Stoltz. It's always been Eric. And they look it up, and in this universe, Eric Stoltz, who was originally picked to be Marty, is actually the one who played Marty. And that's like his first tip off to like, I'm in the wrong universe somehow.
What? Okay.
Yeah, it's a great little like kind of throwaway thing where if you didn't know that.
I'm gonna go ahead and watch it, if not for nothing but for that. I haven't watched it yet. I mean, to be fair, I remember watching the Snyder cut of the Justice League, and that ended up being so much better than the original one.
Mm-hmm.
Minus them changing the music when, with Aquaman in that one scene.
When he goes, yeah, I know exactly where he's got the whiskey and he like throws the bottle.
Yep. Which, whatever. That's, it's its own thing. But we've gotten a little off topic. We were talking about Assassins once again, Howl again.
Yeah, I think our review was like 35 minutes. We're now an hour and 5 minutes.
I know, right? So we have to rein it back in. We're gonna say, give our call. Assassins. Is it a watch or not a watch? I personally am gonna say I'm almost on the fence about this, but not really. For a throwback movie, just looking for something that's a good time, that isn't trying to throw a message in your face, that has some fun characters and some fun interactions, it's a watch.
I would agree. Yeah, it's not streaming anywhere. That would just be included with the price. But you, again, as always, like library, stuff like that, you can rent movies from libraries, or you can rent it from pretty much anywhere. That's what we did. I had like Google Play reward points.
Don't go torrenting. Don't go torrent. Don't go free. Don't do that. We can't say to go do that. But just saying. Yeah, it ended up being a better movie than I expected. So I appreciate you picking it out. I'm sure I'll have something else picked out for us to do.
Yeah,
I've got some things coming up here, Halligans, that I'd like us to do that have not been shown that I know of on YouTube. I have some ideas, so I hope that's going to get come to fruition here soon. For all of you who have made it this far into this, you're amazing. We greatly appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching us. This has been great. Where can they follow us, Ryan? Where can they hit us up? Give us some feedback. What's going on with that?
I don't even know. Just moviehowl@gmail.com, right?
Moviehowl@gmail.com.
That's where we'll go for now.
YouTube. Throw a comment, throw a like, because that's what all the people say to do. You know how it is.
Seems to work.
Otherwise,
oh, and this is the movie, by the way, where that Antonio Banderas meme, where he does that GIF.
It is
of him.
GIF. The meme movie.
GIF. That's where that meme comes from.
GIF.
Yeah, whatever.
All right, guys. Halligans, we love you. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Until next time, I've been Joe.
I've been Ryan.
We're out.